Okay, good morning, good morning. We are about 1 minute to go here on the live stream. Just gonna make sure everything is connected. But good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to In the Feed Zone. We are here sitting in, looks like Richmond. Is that right? We're gonna see how we roll out today. We are in the pen. We've got 23 riders in the pen. We're just gonna make sure everyone rolls out together. So we are actually on the Zwift platform. And if you haven't heard about this, game, definitely check it out. It's Zwift.com. We are on our bikes today. We'll be leading a ride here on Zwift and bringing you guys some information. If you're looking for more information or the audio from this, definitely check out discord.tmodz.com for all the audio for this stream. Let's make sure everything's rolling, and we're about 30 seconds to go. Check out let's make sure everything's rolling. Looking good, looking good. We are 25 seconds to roll here, and we'll get started, and I will do the intro just one last time as we get started. Here we go. All right, let's go. Looks like everybody's grouping up here, turning on to Richmond. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. Look at that. Okay, let's go ahead and move over. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Jason Flores. We are here in the Feed Zone. Typically, you'll find us at 5:45 Pacific, 8:45 Eastern, and 13:45 GMT. We are actually riding here on Zwift in a group ride. You'll be able to check that out on the live stream. But here on the audio, if you're looking to hear more about the different things that we do here with Team ODZ and the podcast and the different things, check out your favorite podcast app and go to there and search The Endurance Lab, and you'll be able to find your favorite podcaster, whether it be Chat and Chill with Taya, myself with In the Feed Zone, or Justin Wagner with What's Up with Power. So we'll go ahead and move forward today. A quick medical disclaimer that the only purpose of this live stream is to educate and to inform, and is not a substitute for professional advice, care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. It's a live stream is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice. So really quickly, just making sure everyone's all together, and we'll get started. So today's article is going to be, the goals of the live stream today are going to be to present articles in the media covering food and hydration and how it relates to endurance sports, and to open a dialogue for viewers to ask questions, to get advice, and just to talk about their experiences. A lot of times there's a lot of information out there for people to consume. So just a nice place to kind of come to talk about different things, and just to find out what your other teammates are doing, and seeing what works and what doesn't. So a good place to start. Hopefully we can bring you some good information. We've got a really great article today. Today's article is actually brought to us by Data Driven Athlete. And if you haven't got a chance to check out their website, definitely go to datadriven.com. Nate Dunn has done a great job on not just articles, but training. He's a nutrition scientist as well. So as far as the things that we like to cover here in the Feed Zone, he's got some great articles, some very sound science. So definitely check that out. Really good information. So if you have a chance, datadrivenathlete.com. So the topic that we'll be covering today is the question, or posing the question, are you fueling enough on the bike? So essentially asking, are you getting the food in appropriately that you are, and what are some general guidelines that will allow you to get what you need to be able to perform or reach the goals that you're looking for on your rides and your training sessions. So the things that we'll specifically look at are going to be what type of carbs or how many carbs we should be taking before a ride, carbs during a ride, definitely carb recommendations of the different things that we can kind of mix and match. We'll go to like a real world food, like sample things that we can kind of work to make things put together. And then we'll put it all together and try to tie a nice bow on it where we are able to answer questions or just give you a sample or how this would all come together in real life as well. So we'll start off with a little bit about carbs before a ride. So before any ride, especially big rides, really it depends on the intensity and the length of time, and the intensity and the length of time of your ride. So really, for longer rides, you want to make sure that you're topping off your glycogen stores. So if you have an afternoon ride or an evening ride, topping off your glycogen stores or your carbohydrate stores with 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrates in a mixed nutrient meal, mixed macronutrient meal, 3 or 4 hours before a race could be very useful. This is a very general kind of recommendation that we find, but something that if in fact you do have the time for, so let's say you're doing an evening training session, having that meal and having some focus on that meal of what you're going to put in could be very important. Making sure that you get the things that you need, let's say in the afternoon or your lunch, so that you're getting a good evening workout. So definitely with that. So the other thing you could look at is if, let's say you have an early morning race or an early morning workout, eating anywhere from 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrates 30 or 60 minutes before your race. So these are those days that you're meeting for a group ride. It might be at 8 in the morning and you've got some time before. You could actually put some carbohydrates in to help yourself have those on board as you go forward. So a lot of times for when we do go outdoors and we're able to get those rides in, or there's some time before your rides, you're able to kind of get some carbohydrates in, you can put those into a larger amount. You notice this is a lower amount than you would if it were 3 or 4 hours. And essentially what this has to do with is the amount of digestion that you can get in. So, and then we could talk about a lot of the situation for at least our team. For Team ODZ, a lot of times the races and rides are very early in the morning, so you would have to go with a lower amount of carbohydrate, somewhere between 30 and 50 grams right before a race, and that's something that can easily be digested in 15-20 minutes, and you'll definitely be able to bring that down. So essentially, depending on first the amount of time you have before your ride and when the ride is during the day, you can get a gauge of how much you should be putting in, and the closer you are to the race or training ride that you're doing, the less that you're going to need to be able to put in. All right, so next we'll move over to carbs during a ride. So different things can be implemented. Everybody has their favorites, different things that you could put in, but really we're going to talk about the amount and the different levels. So what we'll talk about is there's different carb levels before riding, helps essentially top off your carbohydrate stores so that you're ready to do the work that you're going to do during your ride or your training session. But during the exercise, we are looking to serve or to maintain glucose levels across the board during your workout so that you don't dip down and essentially hit that bonk or lower energy levels and you're not able to complete the task or complete the climbs or the goals of the workout. So in simple terms, essentially the more carbs you absorb while riding, the more punch you'll have, or like the energy you'll have for that final KOM or that climb attempt or that sprint for the line, whatever it may be for that day. So keeping those kind of stacked and kind of going could definitely be to your advantage. So during those things during a ride. So how do we get things, how much should we put in and what should we put in, I guess is the next question. So again, we go back to, this goes between how long your ride is and the intensity. So if your ride, if in fact is between 30 and 75 minutes, little to no food is needed. You should have this amount of food in your stores from the food and drink that you had from the day before, or the hours and the meals you had before. So if you're doing a 60 to 75 minute workout, you can easily go with no food if you're going that distance. If you know that you're going 90 minutes or longer, essentially around the 2-hour mark, you're looking at making sure you're putting at least 30 grams of carbohydrates per hour in. That will allow you to make sure that you maintain your glucose levels in your body. If you're around 2 to 3 hours, you're looking at you wanting to put in 60 grams per hour to make sure that you're maintaining that over the course of a ride, and making sure you have good energy. So anything over that, you're looking at 90 grams per hour. But here's the catch. And the catch is that really the body can only put in a certain amount of carbohydrates per hour. And so what we need to do is, if you get to that 60 or just over that 60 grams per hour, you're going to need to find different ways or different sources that will keep those carbohydrates coming in, because if you're just using a single source, you'll actually kind of run out the ability to be able to absorb. So different sources, meaning that you can have simple sugars like glucose or that sort of thing, but you could also add what's called fructose, or another type of source of sugar. And because it is a different source of sugar and is absorbed differently in the body, it will allow you to put in more and essentially get those grams per hour up, if in fact you need 60 grams or more per hour, depending on the length of your ride. And the catch is if you know you're going to go 2 or 3 hours, in that first hour, you actually need to hit your goal grams per hour. That way, you have that fuel later on. We don't sit and wait until you get to that second or third hour and then start hitting 60 grams per hour. So definitely keep that in mind as we go, as you do make your plans and as you move forward with the different things and planning your ride and that sort of thing. So let's see. So how does it look? How does it look kind of all broken up? Like, how could we put this in our pocket to make this work? You know, if you're a frequent watcher of In the Feed Zone, you know that I am definitely a fan of real food, or at least choices that allow the least amount of kind of extra things. So things like example of like a cup of rice having 60 grams of carbohydrates per cup could be very useful. Things like a banana, which would be 27 grams of carbohydrates, and that would be in the form of fructose. So that could be a combination sugar that you can use, a slower digesting sugar. And then also we've talked about the use of maple syrup, whether it be straight up or whether it be in combination with other things, to be able to get that in too. But we've got some really great examples here on the screen. You've got different good sources of carbohydrates. You've got the Scratch Labs here, 30 grams per serving in the hydration drink. You've got a honey stinger bar. You've got you know, different flavors here to help with that profile. You've got a gel, which is about 22 grams. You've got a pro bar, which is a pretty full meal at 40 some odd grams here. And then of course your hydration drink here, which could be anywhere from 30 to 40 grams of 30 or 40 grams of carbohydrates. We've got some good questions here. I'm actually going to go ahead and just take a quick moment to address those. Des Mooney asked, looking at a 8 to 10 hour event next year, how should I look at it in this sort of way? So for Des's question, he's asking how much should he plan to eat? And I think it's something that you'll need to train and kind of make a plan. And so since you're going the distance, I would say, because of the length and the intensity probably being lower, because it's an 8 to 10 hour event, I have a feeling you're going to find yourself somewhere between 30 and 60 grams per hour, and just consistently putting that in. Just because I don't think the intensity is going to be that high end, unless you feel like you will be climbing and racing at that pace. But typically when the races are that long in length, more ultra endurance, kind of that aerobic side of things, you'll find anywhere from 30 to 60 right from the get-go will keep you feeling pretty good and pretty comfortable. But definitely try it in your training. I think that you'll find my athletes that do longer events like that, whether they be gravel races or that sort of thing, having that, and then on top of that having hydration available. So having those separate, where you're fueling your carbohydrates separate for how you're hydrating, so that you're not needing to kind of pair those, could be very useful, unless the race doesn't allow you to have both at the same time, where things like gravel races, you're not able to have both, you know, be able to eat out of your pocket. It can be difficult, but I have a feeling for that longer ride, it definitely may be able to do. So, and then Martin comes back and asks, multi-transporter. What kind of food is that? So what we're looking at is two different ways, Martin. So just to dig a little deeper into that in the science is that we can use straight glucose, which will get absorbed into the body very quickly. And then I spoke about fructose, which actually is a two-part molecule, which will get broken into two different molecules, both glucose and a second molecule that will, it's actually sucrose, that allows it to get digested in the liver. And so it'll allow you to take in more, sugar if needed, and still get that bump, but doesn't get doesn't interrupt the glucose absorption, because once you get to around really getting close to 60 grams of just glucose itself, the body has a really hard time digesting that. So different ways of getting in. So fructose and glucose are really like the two different ways of getting digested. Fructose is through the liver, glucose straight through the small intestine. And if we're able to get that, let's say 60 grams one way, 30 grams the other, you really maximize for those kind of shorter events. Kind of in the longer run, you could probably easily go with just the glucose, or you could even just split it. You could go, 30 glucose and 30 fructose, like in the example with Des in his question, and then you'd be able to kind of get both of those things in, kind of a slower release, and then a quicker release of the glucose. But really good question on that. So let's see, how do we put this all together? We'll go over some general recommendation. Essentially, as you see, as we answer some of the questions here, there's not a real black and white of like, you do this, not that, but there are some general recommendations we can look at. And we can look at this slide kind of coming across. So essentially from the top, you're looking at a longer road race greater than 2.5 hours at a pretty heavy intensity. You're looking at that needing a good amount, somewhere between 90 grams of carbs per hour. So you're looking at one bottle, one gel, a bar pack every single hour as you go. Some kind of mix. Real food options would be like rice cakes, some type of fruit. You could even do dried fruit. That can work well, especially depending on the pace. It can be depending, but if it is very quick and you're needing to go with very quick sources of energy, bars and gels can be a very good source. Going from more solid food at the beginning of a road race like that, moving to more liquid food towards the intermediate, and then your fastest sources of sugar at the very, very end with caffeine can definitely be found to be very useful. In a let's say the 2 to 3 hour road race, you're looking at about 60 grams per hour. And depending on the intensity, the shorter the race goes, the less carbohydrates per hour. We're looking at a short race between 1 and 2 hours. That's 30 grams per hour. And then a shorter crit, which is 30 to 75 minutes, you're looking at less than 30 grams or nothing, depending on how you're coming in. So really, really great graph here that we can take out, print out, put it on the garage wall, keep it in your mind. You can find this at Data Driven Athlete. Nate Dunn's done a great job at putting this. He's got his references and everything there. So let's blow that up just a little bit more. So quick look, come back to this slide, take a look. You've got all the different lengths of events. You've got all your different carbohydrate amounts. And then of course stuff, in the end, it's stuff that you need to try, that you need to see if it works for you. So get on the bike, do the 2 hours on Zwift, go out and do those longer, easy rides out and see what works. Try to get closer to your race intensity to get an idea, because specificity is very, very important. So make sure that you're on point with that, and then kind of dial that in, and then use these as guidelines, and then you can kind of vary from there. So it's just a quick summary as we bring everything back together. Eating carbs before and during a race is essential for maximizing your performance. If you're looking to get the most out of your ride or your training. You hear a lot of stories of doing fasted rides and fasted training. I think there's a time and place for those. But if you're trying to get your maximized performance, you need to put in the fuel that will allow you to get the performance that you're training for. On different parts of the season, it may be useful to kind of cut back on those things. But if you're looking to maximize performance and get the most out of your ride, you're going to need to put food in during, carbohydrates during and before, very essentially to make sure that you get your goals. Also, identifying the intensity and the duration of your ride or race, and this will allow you to dial in your carb fueling strategy. Also, it's something that you need to practice, meaning that maybe our graph says 60 grams per hour, but you're not able to put in 60 grams per hour. So what that does is it kind of puts you at a cap that, hey, this is what I can put in, or you need to find another way that you can actually fuel. And that's where the multi-transport or different ways to get in fuel could be very, very useful. But these are things you have to practice, because there's going to be a time that you'll need to train the gut, essentially your stomach, to be able to maximize the absorption during these rides. So you'll need to find out what you can do. So for a hard hitting, heavy, fast ride, you may not be able to get in the amount of fuel that you need in the form that you want. You might need something like quicker and easier that you can just throw down and like during a quick like ease in the Peloton or something like that, where other times you may have a regroup or something in a group ride and you'll have a chance to stop and be able to eat. So all really good tactics here. I'll go ahead and go back to this slide for people to kind of digest, and we could open up to questions. So I've got a couple riders here on Discord, and I will jump over to the live stream to see if there's any questions other than what we have. Looks pretty good. I think we had answered any questions. Anything on Discord here? Doesn't look like it. That's all right. So we've got those good. The questions we had today were different ways of transporting food in, and we talked about that. That was glucose and fructose. And then we're also looking at how to fuel for a longer event, 8 to 10 hours at something averaging between 35 and 40 kilometers per hour. So really, that's the important part. The amount of intensity that that rider will be doing or riders will be doing will dictate how quickly you can put food in. And so if in fact the pace is heavy and you're not able to get in that amount, and then you will be able to have to match that with the amount that your body can actually put in. So that comes with training. The same way we train ourselves to increase our FTPs and to increase our anaerobic energy stores, we also need to make sure that we can fuel properly and that you get the food in. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and post the link to this article after I finish here. And if you guys have any questions, we can answer there. And we could also bring Nate Dunn to the conversation. He's definitely a great partner with Team ODZ here on our live streams. So you can catch him on What's Up with Power with Justin Wagner on Wednesdays. And as we close out, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you like the live stream, definitely tag a friend in the comments here today, or head over to your favorite podcast app and search The Endurance Lab if you missed this. And so we could also have a listen there, and you will find all of our shows, Chat and Chill, What's Up with Power, in the feed zone, and our newest Coaches Corner, which talks about which coaches go in and talk about different trainings, things like that, and can answer questions there as well. So definitely check us out there.
Hey, Jason.
Sure. Hey.
Hey, Jason, I did have a question. I just got Discord on again.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for your help, by the way, a month or two back getting set up for our rides. But my question wasn't strictly to do with, it is to do with nutrition, but not to do with the energy provision and consumption, but more to do with the impact on my teeth. I'm quite old and I have a kind of complicated mouthful of teeth. And I've lost a few recently, and my dentist has been very critical of two things: eating frequently during the day instead of occasionally, also eating a lot of sugary or fructose or those kind of drinks. And thirdly, she seems to feel that even energy-free isotonic drinks are harmful to the teeth. What do you think about those things? Because certainly what you've been describing is frequent and often eating to keep energized, but it's not great for the teeth, I don't think.
No, we do have an article in queue, and we actually have one of our writers that is a dentist, and I've had some conversations with him about this and have had some thoughts, and I think this will kind of cue this up to bring this to the forefront. But what he has shared is these are things, the recommendations that we're doing are things that we do for the days that we're looking for maximum performance. So for days that you're not riding, or you're riding more easily, let's say, you should stick to a diet that may not have as much sugar or as much carbohydrate sources from it. And I think that's what your doctor may be getting to. The other thing that we had chatted about is making sure that after a ride, a lot of times things just get left over, particles and things like that. So getting a good rinse afterwards could be useful because you're just getting those particles out. I mean, to go as far as brushing your teeth after every ride, I guess would be a really good dentist statement, you know? But I think just in the real world, just getting a good rinse after our rides could help. And then just making sure that you're essentially periodizing the time that you use these really hard carbohydrates per hour, and making sure you're backing off on those days and getting other foods that are not so damaging or essentially high amount of sugar sources on those days that you're not riding as hard. Because if we're doing 1-2 hours of zone 2 or easy aerobic work, really you can get that from your normal food sources, and that could save a lot from your teeth as well. But great question, Brian.
Yeah, my dentist is very keen on lactose, so she advises me, possibly for the rides that are less stressing, to use milk in my bottle rather than a sugary drink, which is probably good advice. It's hard to do, but actually milk has been quite good for me on 1 or 2 long rides.
Yeah, and I think as a recovery drink as well, because of the amount of protein, I think that could work just fine. But again, it speaks to intensity. So really just, I would say just do the water during the ride and then do milk afterwards for that sugar source, because lactose is still a sugar source, but I think it would be definitely a lot easier on the teeth than a straight glucose or something like that. So absolutely.
Thanks, Jason.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap that up. Thanks for that question, Brian. And if you guys have any questions, let us know. And head to your favorite podcast app, search The Endurance Lab, and you can find all of our shows there. And I will see everybody next week in the feed zone.